Hi, this is Jim Peters with Peters Principles, and you never know, you never know literally who you're going to have on TV, and it's in Peters Principles. And today we have Dr. Titus Plomaritis from what town are you in?
Pelham, New Hampshire.
Pelham, New Hampshire. Okay, Dr. Plomaritis is better known in Lowell for the fact that he was the winning touchdown producer in the
Lowell-Lawrence football game. Yeah.
And this was at a time when Lowell-Lawrence played, the entire parking lot would be filled with cars, as well as most of Douglas Road. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely correct.
And Mr. Oh no, he skips my name. The athletic director.
From Lowell High?
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time was Al Mangan.
Al Mangan, that's what I was thinking of. Mr. Mangan from Lowell High was the athletic director, and he had a huge picture on the back of his back wall of his office of a game being played by Lowell and Lawrence. And well, yes, you have the picture that I'm referring to, but he has a picture of the cars. You remember when he took the picture of the cars?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
We had a packed stadium almost every week, Jim.
I know it was like a big New England Patriots game.
That's right.
So yeah.
At that time, Jim, there was no professional football, and the stores were all closed on Sunday. So Lowell every week had a full house. But when they played Lawrence, the house was full and the track was full. There was six deep around the track.
That's right. I went to. I had the opportunity to play in 1990 with their son.
Oh, you were on the same team with Titus Jr.
Right.
Yeah, class of 1970, 71.
What was I thinking? 1990. Okay, 1970, 71.
Right.
And Titus was actually a quarterback, and I was the guy who was warming the bench. So that was my job, to warm the bench. But I got to see some really good football games that year because we won every football game.
Actually, a little story that goes with that, Jim, is in 1948 was the first undefeated football team in the history of Lowell, dating back to 1890. Mm-hmm. And the last undefeated football team Lowell High School had was 1970. So I was on the first undefeated team.
That's what I thought.
Titus Jr. was on the last undefeated team, and there hasn't been one since.
Right. That's how I thought it worked out.
Right.
I thought you were on an undefeated team, but I wasn't sure, based on what you wrote, as far as I got in the book.
Right.
I wasn't sure if that was the case or not. Anyway, Dr. Plomaritis has written a book about his youth called Titus, and it's a very entertaining book. Has a lot of insight, a lot of flair, and quite a bit about growing up a Greek American in Lowell, Massachusetts, back in the 1940s. Would that be fair?
Very, very much so. Yes.
So can you tell us a couple of stories? The thing that stood out with me was your relationship with Irving's fruit stand.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you the fruit stand story. My father had he came from Greece when he was 36 years of age. Mm-hmm. So he didn't catch on to the American language that fast. He only read the Greek newspaper and he read the Greek Bible. Right. So on Saturdays, he was a barber, and 2 or 3 doors away from the barber shop was a fruit stand. It was Irving's fruit stand. Mm-hmm. So we had there were 4 brothers at one time, the 4 oldest children, family of 7, but the 4 oldest, 2 of the 4 had to be at the barber shop when the barber shop closed on Saturday, because that was the day when my father went to Irving's fruit stand and negotiated with his broken English and Irving's Yiddish. Yeah. And he'd get in there and he'd say, how much is it for a bushel of oranges? And whatever price he gave him, my father would shop for the next 30 minutes, and he'd pick out his vegetables, and he'd pick out his tomatoes and his bananas, always the bananas, because the bananas were in a basket and they were already half gone. So they didn't have much life in them left but that was our dessert all the time. The ripened bananas. So what would happen?
And the bananas were bigger than they are now, right? they were quite a bit bigger.
They were, well, yes, they were. But what's interesting is that my father would shop there for a solid 30, 40 minutes, and when he got through, he'd say to Irving, whatever Irving Price gave him the very first price for a whole bushel, my father would give him that figure for the entire order that he had, which was about 4 or 5 bushels of vegetables and fruits. And Irving sometime would say, Daddy, I can't do that. I paid more than that in wholesale. So my father, if he was really generous, he'd say, okay, I'll throw in another $1. But if he was really hard-nosed that day, he'd say, okay, boys, let's go. He would walk out, and 9 out of 10 times, Irving would come out and grab him and say, okay, Denny, you got it. So that's how that story went.
That's it's entertaining because I don't know if you know this, but I married a Greek girl.
Oh,
I married Nikki Songus' sister-in-law.
Oh.
And, actually, Paul Songus' sister. So so my wife's a Songus, and when I was reading your book, I couldn't help but make comparisons between the Songuses, who were on the rich side of town and up on the hill, and you being down in the South
Common. Well,
right.
I'll tell you something that's connected there is that Mr. Songus, Paul's father,
Right.
used to come to my father's barber shop for his haircuts.
Oh, did he?
And that's when I had my little shoe shine box there. I started shining shoes when I was 6, 7 years old, and I remember shining the shoes. That was a long, long time ago.
He was very demanding about shoes too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a little connection between the Songuses because they had a dry cleaning place up on Gorham Street.
Right.
And my father's barber shop was on Gorham Street. So he used to come down there for his haircuts, and I'd shine his shoes.
Well, his father used to tell me, I don't know why people thought we were rich. And I said, you lived on a house on the hill overlooking all of the Greek settlement neighborhoods down there. And I said, of course they thought you were rich. And he was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Okay, so.
Well, you talk about your wife being of Greek heritage. Well, my wife was Irish Catholic, Canadian Irish Catholic, and it didn't fare too well with my dad. So that's why, as you go on in the story in the book, where I was playing football, my father never saw me play football. I had to sneak out of the house to play football. And when it got time to get married, I fell in love with this gorgeous little Catholic Irish Canadian gal, and my father didn't go to the wedding. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We had a little bit of a.
It has a good ending, though. I'll tell you that later.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a riff with when I decided to marry my wife because I wasn't Greek, and that was a problem. So one of her cousins came up to us and said, I can't believe you had the courage to get married and you weren't Greek. And I said, I just thought she was the cutest girl in town, and in the world, actually.
That's right.
And
I know the feeling.
And that's how we ended up getting married. And then Price's Bakery. I loved Price's Bakery. I used to go down to Price's Bakery and pick up day-old loaves of bread for $1 a bag.
Well, let me tell you, I'll go back to my era. You know, you're going back now to the South Common era when that would have been probably the middle 30s. Yeah, the middle 30s. I was born in 1929, so I was about 6, 7 years old. And my oldest brother was Timothy, then the next one was George, and then it was Titus, and then Joseph. So there were 4 boys, 1 year apart. And during the week, we had to take turns going from Gorham Street to Price's Bakery on Schempfer Street with little, we called them rag bags, but they were little grain bags. And we'd get the day-old bread or 2-day-old bread for 2 cents a loaf. And we'd carry it home, and we stored it down in the basement. And it was a dirt cellar.
Okay.
Now it comes into hand where the oatmeal comes in, the oatmeal story.
Right. Well, I read the oatmeal story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good, and that recipe looks fantastic.
the good recipe.
Right.
The new recipe is great, but I'll tell you about the old recipe.
Okay.
Every morning, my mother was a stitcher, and she worked at the mills. She wasn't having kids. She had 7 children, but when she wasn't pumping out children, she was working as a stitcher up on the mills there on the top of the South Common.
Mm-hmm.
So in the morning, my father would make breakfast, and he'd say to me in Greek, "Bring the katsarola," and that's Greek for big pot.
Right.
So we'd bring the big pot over, and one of us would have to go down in the basement and get 2 loaves of bread from the rag bags, from the stale bread downstairs, and we'd bring it up, we'd cut off the little molds and the little rat bites on the side, we'd soak it in water, and we'd put it in the oven. My father would take the big katsarola, would pour 2 or 3 gallons of milk in it, and he'd take these containers of oatmeal and put it in there with a big ladle, and he'd stir it, and by then the bread would be getting warm, so we'd have a nice warm breakfast with oatmeal and warm bread from Price's Bakery.
And milk that was actually milk.
We had milk. We had a 5-gallon container of milk, and the milkman used to come over. He was another one of my father's customers from Market Street. I don't know what the name of the milk company was at that time, but he would come into Gorham Street. We lived on the 2nd floor of a 3-story tenement, and he'd have the key to the downstairs entrance. So he'd open the door, come up to the stairs, and he'd take the old container out and put the new in. There's a 5-gallon container.
Right.
So we'd pick that container up and put it in the katsarola to give you the milk for the oatmeal. So
you didn't waste anything.
we didn't waste anything. And let me tell you, I had a nice little dish. And it was a beautiful dish. And on the bottom of the dish, it was a picture of Shirley Temple. And I had a crush on Shirley Temple. So when we were eating our oatmeal, my father would put a big scoop of oatmeal in each one of our dishes. And just as when I was getting to the bottom of the dish where I could look at that pretty face, plop, another dish, another scoop of oatmeal right on top of it. We had that every day for breakfast.
And I understand that to the people you're selling the book to, you're giving a free
Recipe.
Recipe.
Yeah, I have a recipe.
And also the oatmeal itself.
That's right. People that come to the tour, I'm on the book tour at all the Market Basket stores, and on this book tour, we have everybody that buys a book, and especially for students, the price of the book for students is $25. The adults, it's $40, and if you buy a book, you buy a Titus Plomaritis book,
right,
you get a free box of oatmeal. So Arthur DeMula said, "You put up the book, Titus, and I'll put up the oatmeal." I says, "Okay, that's
right.
a deal."
That's a deal. That sounds good to me. Yeah, I love their oatmeal. I eat their oatmeal all the time.
Well, I have
Not every day like you, but quite often.
my recipe in there. I'm looking. I thought I had it here. I'd put it up to show you. My recipe has. We call it the. Here it is, right here. Yeah, we call it the Market Basket Old-Fashioned Oats Supreme. Because in the Supreme, we add the craisins, the walnuts, and the brown sugar. So it gives it a real good flavor. But everybody that comes in the store gets this here. Actually is a copy that comes right from my book on page 12 and 13.
Right.
And there's a picture of the oats.
Yeah, you gave me a picture of the
So
oats,
everybody comes in the store, these are free, we hand them out to them. And whether they buy the book or they don't buy the book, we're very happy to see them. And if they register, this is something else. If they register, this is a very nice little piece here. If they come in and register, all they have to do is give me their email address. The very last story that I wrote in the book is about the Demoulas family.
Right.
Now this is Mike Demoulas, Mike Telemarcus Demoulas.
Yeah, I knew him.
And this is Arthur and me in the middle.
Right.
And this is the cover of the book. And it's a good time to mention that 100% of every dollar that goes into the book, the price of every, not the profit, but every dollar that goes in goes to scholarships.
Right. I've been telling people that on WCAP.
And if I could, while I'm right here, I brought a picture with me of the last two recipients. Here it is up in front. I thought it'd be nice to show this picture. This is Carly Boswick. She's the one from Lowell High School that won the last scholarship.
Okay.
And this is the other Lowell High School student that won the scholarship.
So these are for scholarships?
These are the two scholarships from Lowell,
right.
And these are the two scholarship winners from Pelham. So there were 4 scholarships this year, and the scholarship total right to date in the past 3 years is $55,000.
Wow, that's incredible.
I'm very happy to give it, because you remember way back when I played football at Lowell High School, I was the recipient of Ray Riddick's first football scholarship to Boston University. And I keep thinking about that over and over and over. And now I'm in a position, I had a very successful chiropractic career. I'm in a position to set up a foundation for scholarships, and I feel so proud to be able to give it back. It's really very rewarding.
It sounds like it would be, and it's not a small sum of money. That's a lot of money to give out for scholarships.
Well, just to add that a little bit to that, Jim, I have a board of directors. There's 11 people on the board. 5 members are in my family, and the other 6 are well-known community people in Lowell. And I have instructed the board of directors and my family. I'm 87 years of age. I know I'm not going to be around too much longer, but the corporation will be there forever. It's a foundation. It's a charitable foundation specifically for scholarships. And I told them that when I'm gone, 100% of the money in the book campaign is going into scholarships. And if I can add this little tidbit, I pitched a book in New York in October to the movie industry. And there's 7 studios that listened to my pitch. And they said they're all interested. The book has the making of a miniseries or a full-length movie, but they said at this time, we're not looking for that. But we gave it to our playwright people, and they all have it there. And when the time comes and we need it, we'll be in touch with you. So I told my board of directors, when and if that happens, 100% of those proceeds also go into the scholarship fund.
That's great. That's fantastic. That would really boon up the scholarship fund, right?
It certainly would.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about football.
Okay.
Okay, because this is like football heaven. Where the Patriots are playing is football heaven, because I grew up in Chicago and Iowa. Iowa didn't have a professional team. They had the University of Iowa team, which was the top 10. And we used to go to the Iowa games all the time. And then when we got to Chicago, we didn't go to the Bears games because we didn't really like the Bears. So we waited till we got to New England, and we started going to the Patriots games. Can you tell us a little bit, because you went through...
I'll be very happy to give you a quick resume, or I'll give you a quick history. That's a better word.
Yeah.
When I first went to Lowell High School, I came from Pawtucket School in Varnum Avenue.
Right.
And when I was in the 8th grade, the phys ed teacher there, his name was Mr. Sullivan. And he would take 2 or 3 of the kids from that school, from the Pawtucket School, and he'd take them occasionally, maybe once a week or once every other week. He'd take them out to the Lowell Stadium to watch the varsity, Lowell High School varsity, play football or go through the drills. So I was looking forward to that. I said, boy, next year, because we only had 8 grades at Pawtucket School, so when I was a freshman, I went to Lowell High School, and I had already had some experience of doing some of the calisthenics with the football players and the coaches. So I had the good fortune of playing under a coach named McCormick. And then there was Herb Cochran that came in, and he was there for 2 years or 18 months, and he was a great physical education instructor.
Right.
He had a very poor 1-loss record. I think in 2 full seasons he won 1 game. and that happened to be the Lowell Lawrence game, which I got my sweater. That was in 1945.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had a little bit of I had a lot of trouble getting to the football games because my father didn't approve of that. So when I was 14 years of age, I'll just go back a step. When I was 14 years of age, my father told me that I had to leave school and help support the family. That's the way they did it in Greece. So when I went back to the school, I told the headmaster and the football coach and the athletic director, they said, you can't do that. So they got a police car, and they drove to my father's barbershop with the beacon flashing. They drove right up to the barbershop. My father didn't speak English that well, but he had another barber in there that spoke English and Greek.
Right.
And they stormed into the barbershop, and they said to they was talking English. They said, you can't take him out of school. If you take him out of school now, you're going to jail. So the barber transferred that to my father, and my father, being the negotiator that he was, he said, well, he said, let's talk this over. So then he said, if Titus agrees to milk the cows and feed the chickens, I'll let him go back to school. Like he was the winner of this argument.
Right.
So I was very happy to do that. I said, I'll milk the cows and feed the chickens 8 days a week instead of 7 if I could go back to high school. So that worked out, but for the next 2 years I was there, he never saw me play. He didn't know I was on the football team. I had to sneak out of the house on my bicycle from Varnum Avenue. It's a 7-mile ride from Varnum Avenue to the football stadium.
Right.
And I'd play the game, and then I'd come back on my bicycle about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd get the devil from my dad. Many times it was punishment. Many times I had to sit in the barber shop and read the Bible for 2 hours. I mean, there was all kinds of punishment. But he still never knew I played football. He never saw me play. So
That's incredible.
when I went in the military when I was 17, because Ray Sullivan, the headmaster, said to me, Titus, there's a great opportunity. The military is coming to the high school, and they're recruiting our junior and senior students. This is right after World War II had been declared over, but they were sending recruits to Japan to relieve the troops that were there.
Right.
So Mr. Sullivan convinced me to go in. He said, Titus, I'll give you they have what they call a USAFI course. I'll give you the courses you need to do, so when you come back, you'll only be 18 years of age. You go in there for 18 months. I was 17. You come back at 18, you can come back to high school, and you can graduate. And you'll be guaranteed a chance to go to college. So that's why I did it.
That's incredible.
Yes, and so when I went to Japan, I went in the paratroopers. They sent me to Japan. And once I went to Japan, they reduced the 18-month hitch to 15 months.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, they were having tryouts for the 11th Airborne team. So I said, well, I'll try out for the team. I went out, and there was like 150 people out there trying out for the team. Some of them were professionals, some were college players, but most of them were lieutenants and captains in the military. But I figured I'd give it a try. I went out there, and on the very first day, one of the assistant coaches comes over, taps me on the shoulder. That meant turn in your shoes and your uniform. You're all done. So I did that. But my friend from Cohasset, his name was Jack Petrolia.
Okay.
He was a big kid, 6'6", 260 pounds. He was very big for high school.
Mm-hmm.
He's stuck on the team. So I said, well, we were living in the same barracks. I said, I'll go over and watch him play. I didn't have my uniform, but I had my paratrooper and my paratrooper boots on.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day, they were having the kicking tryouts.
Right.
So they had the punters and the place kickers and the specialists. So I'm watching these guys kick. And at that time, the Cleveland Browns and the United States pro team had Lou Groza. He was the best kicker in pro football at that time. Mm-hmm. And that was a straightaway kicker. That wasn't a sidewinder. Straightaway kicker. So I was a straightaway kicker, and I was a good kicker in school. And there's a great story in the book that tells you way back when I was...
Yeah, I'll get to it.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to it yet, but...
Well, I'll finish this story. I'm over there now in Japan, Sapporo, Japan, And I'm watching these tackles and all the big linemen thinking they're all Lou Roses. And I'm watching them kick their kickoffs. There's a dead kick where the ball's going 35, 40 yards, no trajectory. I'm watching 3 or 4 of those things, and I'm going over to where the kids are retrieving the kicks. And I says, let me kick a couple of these back. So I'm without a tee and nobody holding it. I put a little kick on the ground, set the ball up, and I took a 2-step delivery. Boom, boom. And you can hit a pow! And you watch that ball, nice end over end spin, about 55, 60 yards in the air. So the coach sees 2 or 3 of those in a row, and he says to his assistant coach, who's that kid down there? He said, you took his uniform away from him 2 days ago. He said, give it back to him. He's our kicker. So that's how I made the team.
That's how you have to be the kicker. That's interesting. Okay, here's what we're going to do. This is such an exciting story about Lowell and about the Greek community and about everybody, the high school and everything, that we're going to do it in 3 or 4 parts, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Whatever you want to do, Jim,
okay.
I'm game.
Okay, then we'll do it in 3 or 4 parts, and we'll put you on. We'll do the next one in about 2 weeks.
Whatever you say.
And put this today's show out on by the end of the week.
Okay.
So tell Titus that you're going to be on television, and he can watch you on YouTube.
Okay.
So, and say hello to him for me.
Okay. Can we give the book one more plug?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Let me hold it up here.
Yep. The book will be for sale at all Market Basket stores. This week we're going to be I'll be in Salem, New Hampshire, which is only 10 miles down the road. Then I'm coming back. I'll be in this area for the whole month of August. I'll be in Greater Lowell.
Okay.
In Nashua and Hudson, and the book is $40 for adults. It's $25 for students or senior citizens. And with the book, you get a box of oatmeal.
Right.
And 100% of the sales, not the profit, the sale goes into scholarships.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate it.
Okay. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Okay, this is Jim Peters with Peters Principles, and this has been Dr. Titus Plomaritis, who was we'll get into this next week, but quite a famous ball player back in his day. And you'll love the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.